Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar, especially those that are attending our webinar for the first time. We have a lot of return visitors and a couple of people here. This is their first experience with the ClubExpress webinar. And we do webinars a couple of times a month. Some are general overviews of ClubExpress. It could just be an overview of the platform or an overview maybe from the perspective of a bicycle club or from the perspective of a money manager in the club. And a lot of the webinars, particularly the ones that I do, are sort of deep dives into particular functionality. And today is one of those. We're going to be taking a look at the advanced content editor. First, we're going to have a little introduction, and then we'll go into a demonstration. Then we'll have a Q&A at the end. But let's take care of a little housekeeping first. All of the phones and microphones are muted except for mine and Michael. And Michael is in our support staff. We'd like for you to ask questions into the chat window. And Michael will do his best to answer the questions in the chat, but then we will revisit the questions at the end so people watching the recording will be able to see the questions that were asked and we can share with the entire group. A recording of this webinar will be available, and it's on the clubexpress.com Cool Stuffs page. So if you go to clubexpress.com, click on the Cool Stuffs link at the top of the page, then click on the Webinars tab at the left side of the page. That brings you to the webinars, scheduling, and recorded webinars. Down towards the bottom, it will have a list of all the recent webinars. Similarly, on the Tutorials tab, just above the Webinars tab, there is a list of the recent tutorial videos, the training videos, and it's listed either by recent or by tab. So if you want to see the things that were available for the website tab or the people tab, they're listed there. If you're a ClubExpress user, and particularly if you like ClubExpress, we'd appreciate it if you would go to clubexpress.com/reviews and click on one of these links and leave a review so that other people who are evaluating association management solutions, that they can have the benefit of your experience, how things are working out well for your organization. So today we're going to be talking about the advanced content editor. We'll talk a little bit about the editor in general. And I want to talk a little bit about WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, versus coding. We'll talk about the full editor and some of the limited versions of the editors. For example, the full editor is available when you're doing custom pages. But inside emailings, you have limited editors, or inside of blogs or discussions that are particular to those particular functions. We'll go over the editor layout, how to add page rows, why you should be adding page rows, talk a little bit about responsive pages, and we'll show how to add widgets. So there's actually a lot to get through. So let me do this. Let me share my screen with you. In ClubExpress, you have a lot of ways of authoring content. I'm currently logged in as Martin Smith. I'm going to go to the control panel. And if you go to the website tab, you'll see that most of the things on the website tab have to do with authoring on the top here. The home page, custom pages, documents, events, news and articles. There are also in the communications, you've got things like blogs and emailing and surveys. These are all places where you can create content. And if we were to look at, say, the home page, and I did a webinar and we have tutorials on the home page. If we come over to the home page and I go into edit mode, you'll see that we have these rows here that show what is available and to whom they are available. Like this row here is active and it's available to everyone. A row down here is inactive, meaning it doesn't show right now and it's available to everyone. But you also might have something that is, let me see. I know there's one in here somewhere. Oh, active. This one is inactive and available to members only. But the point is that on any one of these things, if you were to go in and edit it, you get put into a content editor. And this is the advanced content editor. And we'll go through this in another document. We'll do it in a custom page. But the point is that this editor in various forms shows up in many places. And the idea here is that you can do what's called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So that if I want to add a photograph, I can say add a row here. If I put my cursor here, let me just go, now let me put my cursor here. I'm going to add a row here. And I can actually come in here and say add a photo, add an image. And if I look for the word balloon and I show pictures, I can just pick a balloon and it will add it in here. The point is that I could do this without going into HTML and creating the div, creating the image tag and all of that. So I want to do this in a visual style, but understand that in most, but not all cases, you can always go to the underlying HTML. So we'll talk about how these things work in a little bit. The other place where this is used a lot is if we go into, say, communications and go into emailing. If I search for an email, I'll just pick one that someone's already done here. I don't know what's in this one here. When you do an email, it's a little different editor. And instead of dragging in rows like we do in a custom web page or on the home page, you can decide whether or not you want two-column text or two-column text and images above it. But when you go into a text area here, say down here where it says this is text, if I click on this, I'm going to get a content editor, but you'll notice that it's not quite the same. It doesn't have the same features. In this example, we don't have the ability to add graphics because this one is really just for editing text. If you wanted to add graphics in this particular configuration, you would have done it through the image that was above it. So very often you'll see that the editor is tailored specifically for a particular task. And this is an example of that. However, if you really needed to do something like that, you could go down here to the HTML and add an HTML block here. And then if you edit this, you'll get, in effect, the full editor. You may not get all of the fonts that are available to other pages because this is, you want fonts that are referred to as email safe. But the point is that you'll get all of the tools that you would have in a normal editor. So don't ignore that HTML because you're also getting the HTML coding window here. And we'll get into all of those things. But if you go into discussion forums, there's a limited editor. If you go into blogs, there's a limited editor. And so we're trying to sort of keep you out of trouble so that the editor is tailored to the job at hand. I'm going to take a look at a particular document. And this is the document we're going to look at. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the control panel because I want to keep that document open in another window. I'm going to go to the website tab, and we're going to use custom pages as an example of what you can do. And so I've already searched for custom pages. I'm going to look at this one here called Demo Advanced Content Editor. And if I click on the view icon, it'll show me the page. If I click on Edit Content, it'll bring me into the editor. So let's look at the editor and what we have here. You can resize the window by going like this. You can maximize the window by clicking the little four-headed arrow there. I probably will keep it not maximized, but I'll just make it a little larger. And let's look at the area. So this whole thing here is called the Advanced Content Editor. At the top, you've got a toolbar with various tools that are very similar to what you'd expect to find on any word processor. Bold, italic, underline, pick whatever styles are defined. We'll get to paragraph in a little bit, but you've got alignment tools, numbering and bulleted tools, indent and outdent tools. We'll take a look at a couple of these things: insert link, photos, and images. This little suitcase here turns on this sidebar. So if I turn it off here and then click on it, it'll turn it back on. And this one here, this little wrench, shows a second row of tools. And I typically turn that on. So you've got clipboard stuff, you've got justification. Here's where you can pick fonts and font sizes, background color, and we'll go through most of these things. We've got things like group boxes, and we'll look at all of these things because this page has demonstrated a lot of it. But that's how you turn on or off the second row of tools. So at the top, you've got the toolbar. In the middle, you've got the content area. And at the bottom, you've got a couple of buttons. It tells you how many, and some information, how many words, how many characters. We're in design mode now, or in design view, which is the WYSIWYG view. What you see is what you get. We can also go into HTML view. So here's where you've got control over all of the content. And so you can tweak things. And then you've got what's called preview. And preview is a rough approximation of what the page will look like. And the reason I say an approximation is because there'll be certain things, for example, polls and upcoming events and recent blogs. These do not show in preview, but they do show in the full page. So if I flip over to this other tab and we look at the full page, you'll see that we have upcoming events here. We've got recent blogs here. We've got a couple of polls here. And we'll talk about these items as we go through the kinds of things that you can put into the page. But just recognize that the preview doesn't load those things. So I'm going to go back into design mode. So when you create a page, any page, well, in fact, let me just do that. Let me cancel out of this. And let me add a custom page. I'm actually not going to add very much to it. Events, editor, demo, and I'm not going to make it active for a moment. If we save this, and now I need to go find it. Advanced editor demo here. And so when you come into the system for the first time, you come in and it has a row. And this row is called the 100% width row. And you typically start typing into this inside border. You see there's a dotted border, there's a 10 pixel pad, and then there's an inside area. You type into the inside area. And behind the scenes, you'll see that there's a div with a class, and it says it's got some content editable information. And so this inside div is the one where the content is actually entered. Unless you're an HTML geek, you really don't need to know that. But it's that content editable is telling me that I can't edit the content outside of this inner box here. If I want to add another row, I would come down to the bottom and I would decide what kind of row I want to add. So this one here is 100% width. Oh, by the way, if you have older pages that have been up for a couple of years that predate this approach, you will find that all your content will be within one large 100% width box. And the reason for these page rows is that this allows the page to be responsive. And responsive is the way that a page can adapt depending on the display of the client device. And I'll give you an example of that in a couple of minutes. But if I come over here, say this is 7525, I can click here. It'll place the 7525 at the cursor position and add a row underneath it. So I could come over here and place a 33, 33, 33. So this is in lieu of making columns. Before this system was introduced, people would typically make columns by creating tables. and make tables with columns that were, 33% of the width of the table. Well, the problem is that that doesn't work particularly well on mobile devices. And a good example of that is if I come over here, let me just see, if I come over here and I look at, say, this is a 33, 3-column here. If I make this window smaller, let's just come over here. If I make this window smaller, watch what happens when it gets to be about halfway. You see how they now just rearranged, so now they stack one under the other. That would not be possible if these were done in a table with table columns. So that's a good example of something being responsive. Now, will notice that this one down here, this one was 25, 25, and 50%. This one is not stacking, but the one above it is stacking. And the reason for that is currently by design. And the things that will stack are generally the ones that are evenly divisible, like 33, 33, 33, 25, 25, 25. Strangely enough, 50, 50 is not. And that was a request, I think, by some users who wanted these things to stay together. But there's another one here called image floated left and image floated right. They will stack. So if I come over here and the reason it gives you a space between them is so you can position the cursor here to say, oh, I want an image floated left here. And so this way you get a row where you can have an image here and text here, and these things will stack and reorganize as necessary. Once you've got a row in place and you click on the row, at the top here, you'll see a move current row up or move current row down. So if I highlight this row here, and you'll see there's like a blue border around it, and I click the down arrow, now it'll swap position, and I can just keep moving it down, or I could take this, I could highlight this row now, everything goes blue, and I can move that one down. So that's the way you move rows around. And if you don't want a row, click on the row to highlight it, and click on the trash can here to delete the row. It'll ask you, are you sure you want to delete the row? Because if you have content in there, maybe you don't want to delete the row. So the way you could delete the row, say I wanted this content, but I really wanted it in a 3-column layout, I could highlight the content, drag it to its new position, then come over here and delete the row. So now I've maintained the text, but I deleted its row container. So that's just a little bit about rows. And you have a bunch of things. You've got 100% width and all that. Now, between the rows, you can actually type text. And it actually shows up in the HTML, but it doesn't have any paragraph breaks around it. It's not a good idea to have things outside of the page rows. So the best practice on this is you really should have page rows for everything. You can close up the space between page rows, but I would much rather that you take the text and put it in a page row or another. And if you close this up and you can't seem to get your cursor back to the right place, then you can actually go in here and put your add breaks and things like that between it. You can also nest page rows. So if I have a page row here and I've got an item here and I want a 50-50 column within this, I can highlight, say, this middle section here, and it will insert at the cursor point. So now I've got a 50-50 column inside of this 1/3 column, or if I decided that I wanted over here to add some really skinny columns, I could actually do that. So you can nest these things. You can put something inside here. You can put another 40-60 inside there. It really looks obnoxious after a while. But the point is that you can nest them if that's appropriate. So I'm going to cancel this and go back to the other document. So now we're back to this document here. There's a couple of other tools. You see there's word count at the bottom. You can also zoom. You can click on zoom here, say I want to see this thing at 200%, and that will magnify everything within the editor region, which is different than doing it with your browser, where you're doing the entire screen. Let me just bring that back down to 150. So I tend not to play with that very much. I just leave it at 100%. And there's also a print button here that will let you print the current content. But let's take a look at some of the tools. But let me just break for a moment and ask Michael, do we have any questions about page rows at the moment?
You covered the one about deleting content, a content row that contains content, so that one's good. And then there was a question about whether a 50-50 row would end up stacking when displayed on a mobile device, because I know we covered it for 33, 33, 33s and the smaller rows.
Yeah, the answer, I believe, is no. And I think that was by design. All of the split rows, the evenly split row stack, except for the 50-50s.
Well, we just had one other question that had to do with the preferred browser for Macs, because I know Macs, especially with Safari, sometimes give some unpredictable behavior when in this editor. So, I mean, I recommend Chrome for Mac, but do you have some other ideas, Alan?
I do not, because I use Apple as all my iOS devices, but I do not currently use a Mac, so I don't have any best practices on that. All right, so let's talk about a few things here. So I'm going to turn on this second toolbar here, and we'll just go through some of these things here. So this is an example of a 50-50 page row. And we show that we have control over formatting text and images. So this is pretty basic. So if I highlight some text and I click on B for bold, it'll bold it. If I highlight some text and say I really want it to be 48 pixels high, it's going to be 48 pixels high. Similarly, you can come in here and change color of the background of the text. Or if I come over here, I can change the color with this one here of the text itself, of the font. So you've got these basic features here. And so you got bold and underline and all of that stuff. Here is a bulleted list and you can indent and outdent. You can take the text and justify it centered or right justification or left justify. And if you go down here, you can do full justification. You can do things like copy to the clipboard. It says here, please use Control V to paste or Command V on a Mac, because it turns out that you can't just right click on it and choose paste. Because there's no icon for paste. You actually have to do it with the keyboard. So if I do Control V here, it'll take whatever was in the clipboard and stick it in here. Control Z will undo, as are these here, undo and redo. It shows what you're undoing. If you want, you can undo any one of these things. And a really nice feature here is if we look here, if I put my mouse over here, you see we have at the bottom, it's showing that we've got a div within a div within a div within a font. And if I were to highlight this, let me see if I can just show you maybe in a table. If I come over here, this is showing I've got a div within a div and a div. Inside the body, there's a row and a data in the font. I can remove that font by removing the element. So you can remove the last thing. So that'll get rid of the font change there. Now the last thing was strong. I can remove that, get rid of the element. And I'll remove this. I can actually get rid of the table data and all of that. I'm just going to undo a couple of these things. So that little tool at the bottom will show you where you are in the hierarchy, and you could actually remove things, or you could come over here and say, oh, I really want to highlight I've got a table here. I really want to highlight this table. So if I click over here and then come over here and click table, it actually highlights the whole table. If I click over here, I could say, oh, I want to highlight the row. So I can click the row. And now whatever I do will apply to the row. So it's a quick way of selecting things, very specific things. So that's something that people tend not to use. But if you're a web designer, this is a whole lot easier very often than going in and looking at the HTML code to try to figure out where you are. Let's go back up to the top. Let's do a couple of things. I'm going to add an image floated left. So when I add that, it did it at the cursor position. So we've got an area where I can put in text. Float left text. And in order to add a graphic here, it says right-click to replace the image or press delete to insert your new image. So I can right-click here, and I can change the image. So if I go look for the word balloon again, let's use that one there. That will stick it in here. And so this will float left, and the text will jump underneath it if it needs to. I can click on this, and I can right-click on it and change the properties of the image. So if I want this thing to be 200, and you can maintain the aspect ratio or not, you can align the image, you can put a border around it. If I want to put a red border around it, that's 3 pixels wide or whatever. When I click on this, that was pretty obnoxious. And if I change properties, let's cancel that, and let's undo those changes. But you can change the properties here, or you can change the image entirely. And you can do that to any of these images. Right-click on any of the images. You can change the image. You can change the properties. Now, there's a difference between a photograph and an image. Images are referred to as web images or web graphics. And these are images that you've uploaded, and they go into, if you go to the control panel and you go to the website tab, down towards the bottom of the setup, you've got a thing for web graphics. And these are things that you upload, and they're typically used for things like the header and logos and things like that. They're uploaded in one resolution. Whatever size you upload, that's the size of the picture. As opposed to a photograph, when you upload a photograph, it typically makes 3 resolutions. There's a thumbnail image, there's a screen graphic, and then there's the high resolution. So if I want to insert, let me just kill this row here. Let me come over here, and I'm going to remove this row. I'm going to just insert another row here. If I want to insert a photo instead of insert an image, if I insert a photo, it'll say it's a screen here that says, okay, what photo are you looking for? So we're going to look for balloon again. But this is different, you see, because we've got all these different photos. So I could pick any one of these, and I can display this, either not display the photo itself and just display as a link. Then the link could say, click here to see the photo. Or I could display it as a thumbnail image. So when they click on the thumbnail image, it will pop up a window of the photo. Or I could just display it on the page. So if I display it as a thumbnail here and I save it, it makes a small one here, but it actually will have a link to it. So that if I preview it, the link isn't live. But if you clicked on it, it would pop up a screen size version, much the same as if you had gone to your photo album and clicked on a photo. So that's the difference between photos and web graphics. Now, if you want to make a link, links are interesting because you wind up with this thing called a link builder. And if I want to put a link here, it said, this is a link. I can highlight text, or I can put the text in later. If I click on a link, it says, what kind of link do you want to link to? And so there's sort of two types of links. There are things within your ClubExpress system, like link to a built-in module, or link to a specific custom page, or link to a specific photo album, or link to an event in the future. And so if you decide that you want to link, say, to a document, it's going to say, okay, what folder is the document in? And we say, okay, these are government regulations. And it will look in that and say, we wanted to make a link to the FAA drone regulations. And then the link itself can actually be text, or it can be a button, if I click on button, or you can upload an image, and then clicking on that image will link to whatever this is. So if I click on FAA drone regulations and I say it's a button, it'll actually put a link here. So when I click on this, it will launch that document, the same as if somebody had gone to the document manager and picked the document. So the link could be pretty much anything. And so you can link to a blog, and it'll say, well, what blog do you want? But that's linking to the blog itself. It's not linking to a blog post. So if you want to link to a blog post, what you would typically wind up doing is going to the blog post, or going to some particular thing that you're looking for. So if I go, say, here to communications, and I go to blogs, and I look at a particular blog post, say this one called the Spring Fly-In. If I look at this, this is a particular blog post. I would come up here, copy the URL, and treat it as if it was not on my website. And so I can come over here and say, this is an external page. Then I can post the link in here, and then put the text here, Jen's blog post. And it would put that in. So if you can't get something in the link builder that gets to where you want to go, because it doesn't drill down asking which module or which page or which photo album, if you wanted a link to a particular photo as a link, as opposed to displaying the photo, you could do that by just getting the URL and treating it as an external page. So you've got all these other things here. So if you ask for a volunteering opportunity, it'll say which volunteering opportunity. If you ask for a photo album, it'll say which photo album. If you ask for a custom page, well, which page? So you can do all of those things. And you can decide whether the target opens in the same window or if it opens in a new window. If it's to an external page, I typically have it open in a new window, so they're not leaving my site. So that's a quick overview of creating links. And this link builder shows up in a lot of different places in a lot of the different editors. You've got a couple of things, like you can create a table. And if I come over here and I put in another 50-50 row, just bring this up here, I can create a table. And the way you do this is by clicking on the table icon here, and you can insert a table, and I can decide how many rows and how many columns. So let's assume I want 4 columns and 3 rows. I can do that, or I can go down and that will just create it here, or I can go to the table wizard, which will ask for how many rows and columns you want, what the properties of the cell are, and all that. And you can pick from different layouts. So you can pick from different colors and things like that. And you can apply these things to any table. So I've got a table down here that I can right-click on it, insert rows, insert columns, delete columns, look at the cell properties, or look at the table properties and things like that. So it's the same wizard, but you can get to it after you've created the table. We recommend that you really only use tables these days for tabular data. Don't just use it for organization, row and column organization, because they won't work well in mobile devices. Going down the tools here, if you have a link, this would light up, which will allow you to remove a link. So if I were to create a link, any link here, let's make it to a custom page, and we want to go to, I don't know, this demo poll page. If I click on it, then this remove a link shows up. I can also right click on it and change the link or break the link. Break the link is effectively the same as remove a link. There's a thing called group boxes. This is a group box where it has a title and some text or some related elements. So I can come over here, and if I want to insert a group box, it puts it in here. Then you go and enter your title and you enter your content, and that shows up like that. Let's get rid of that one. Here you can insert a symbol. So you can pick symbols like infinity and stuff like that. This is for media. So most of the time, I don't see that people are going to be inserting flash videos very much. Most of the time, what we recommend is if you want to insert a video, you want to insert code that displays the video that's on some media streaming server. So if I wanted to come over, say, to a cool stuff page, and I go to a webinar, I go to recent webinar, and I go, say, to the managing menus. Actually, let's go to a video tutorial, something a little smaller. And we go to news and articles, and I watch this on YouTube. What I can do here is I can click on share down here. And it says, how would you like to share? What you want to do is you want to pick up the embed link. So if you click on embed, it'll show you this code here, and you copy this code, and you can optionally say, oh, I want to start 30 seconds into it. I want to start whatever. So if I copy this to the clipboard and I come back in here and I click on this icon and I insert media embed code, and now I just paste that code, which gives me the width and the height. It's just an iframe. It will stick that in here. So now your video will display in your page. And if need be, you could go in and you could resize it by, looking at the HTML code and just changing the height and width. I'm going to take that out. For those of you that really want to put in smiley faces, emoticons, they're all available here. You need to laugh at your people. You can do conversions. Oh, that's where it is here. Where's my conversion? Here. Text can be converted. So if I highlight this, and this uppercase A to lowercase, it will convert whatever you've highlighted to lowercase. I'm going to undo that with Control Z. I can convert lowercase to uppercase. Oop, I have to highlight it first and make it all uppercase. I can take something like this and convert it to superscript. And similarly, there's a subscript. You can also do some really fancy stuff. Oh, here's my superscript and subscript sections. You can do some really fancy stuff. You can highlight something and come over here to the style builder. And you can change the background, the color you want to be that color. And then you change the font, and you can change the font color to be that color. And then you can change the font family, and you can change everything about the layout, the box, the border, and all of that, and really customize whatever the selection is. So now we've got that red text on the background. Now I could have done that with these tools up here, but that gives you one place to do all of this stuff. So we've done photos, we've done embeds. So now what we need to do in the last couple of minutes is talk about widgets. So this left-hand tab here is all about page rows. This one is all about widgets that you can insert. And we have widgets mostly down here. So we can have things like a poll. And so I added 2 polls here. So if we want to add a poll, just put it over here. If I want to insert a poll, when you insert the widget, it says, which polls do you want? So if I click on that poll gets inserted. If I right-click on it, I can replace the poll with a different poll, or I can kill it. I'm going to delete it. And if we look down here, I've got 2 polls. One's called Best Balloon Colors, and one's called Month for Fly-In. And if I click over here, let me go back to that page. I'm going to view that page in the in another tab. You'll see the poll will display differently depending on whether or not someone has already voted in this poll. So this person has already voted in the what's the best color for a balloon. And it's showing the results of the poll and showing that I, Martin Smith, had answered rainbow. But if they haven't voted in the poll, it gives them the opportunity to vote without seeing the results, because you don't want to lead the witness when they're ready to vote. So that's a poll. There are a couple of other ones, like recent blogs. If you put a recent blogs widget in, it'll show you your recent blogs, and you can decide how far back you want the blogs to be able to go. There's similarly one for recent articles. There's one for birthdays and anniversaries. And birthdays and anniversaries will only show if you have enabled tracking of birthdays and anniversaries. And they're done in the people options on the control panel. So you can decide that you want to put them up there, and it'll show, and you can specify how many days out you want the birthdays and anniversaries to show. This is news articles. This one here is new members. This one here is weather. So you get a bunch of these things. This one here is Facebook feed, and there's a Twitter feed, and you can put in one that is a photo album. So if I just come back over here, you'll see that we have insert poll, which we saw. Insert slideshow, it'll ask you which photo album you want. This one is insert upcoming events, upcoming news articles, a recent news item feed, which we just showed. Insert Facebook, insert Twitter, insert weather. If you insert weather into a small column, it'll display, if I just say insert weather here, it says, well, what's the longitude and latitude? I think may default to Schaumburg. I'm not sure. If we go to preview, yeah, Schaumburg, it'll just show, if it's in a narrow column, it'll just show the temperature and some other information. But if it's in a wide column, it'll show a forecast. So it tries to adapt to what you're trying to show. So in the widgets, if new widgets start coming in, they'll be appended to this row here. So again, you can get insert recent blogs and things like that. Now, some of these things do not update in real time. So sometimes it's important, you can just right-click on something and say, refresh the data. And it tells you, okay, what you need to do is save the editor and reload the underlying page to see the changes. So that's useful if you've got new members that joined. With new members, they don't update right away. So if a new member joins and you want to have the poll that is the welcome members, and if I want to edit this here, we can say, what should it say? Do you want it to do just display new members, or do you want to display renewals? Then you change the title, you put in the time period, and set the font. So there's a whole lot of these widgets that you can look at. Again, look at the advanced editor tutorial where I go into details on each one of these widgets, how they're all configured. So, Michael, what kind of questions do we have?
Okay, we've got one of them you just covered, which was getting the event widget to refresh when it sometimes doesn't do it immediately.
Yeah, there's another thing. Sometimes I find logging out and logging back in again will get it to refresh.
And then you can, it says resize the image in an image float content row. Can you resize that image? I've never actually tried that.
What you can do is you can right-click on it and choose properties, and then say, I want this to be 200 pixels wide, and now it's
Does
200
that
pixels.
also work in an image float row?
If I do an image float here, yeah, over here it does. Now it's a little different
Okay,
if you're in the editor for an email. If I cancel this and if you go into the control panel, communications, emailing, if you have a graphic in here, so say it's this one here, and I go pick an image. Just pick any image, balloon here. This will try to resize it, and now you get a resize handle where you can actually drag it. But then, so you edit it by dragging it here. So this is because things display differently in an email program than they do in a browser. Next question.
No, yep. Okay, so we've got, can you save custom colors for future use? And the only way I was thinking about doing that is maybe in website look and feel.
Yeah, in website look and feel, I just did 2 webinars on that and just published 4 new tutorial videos on that. If you go down to website look and feel, on this particular website, there's no apply button because we don't want people messing with it. If you click on colors, you can choose a bunch of color palettes, which will then apply. So if I choose, say, this a color palette, this will apply color palette to everything. And then within, I think it's under design, you can pick different patterns. And say if I chose this, I can go here. So the point is that we don't have a way saving that specifically. However, there are ways of setting some things with custom CSS where you could actually define styles as custom styles. And let me just revert back here for a moment. What that will do is when you're in a custom page and they would show up in here. So you can actually do that. And there is, if you look up, I think, custom styles in the administration guide, there is some flag that you can do when you're defining a style that give it a name to show up in this styles menu. So yeah, you can do it, but just recognize that if you mess up your custom styles, ClubExpress really can't support that. But if you really mess up your custom styles and you can't get to your website because you've decided to hide everything, ClubExpress can go in and remove your custom styles and get you back in business. But custom styles are really only for very experienced web designers. But yes, there is a facility so that custom style will show up here. And so if whatever text you want, you could say, I want it to be that, my emergency style or something like that. Next question.
Good. Yes, okay. Can you show how to fill a content row section with color? Like if you scroll down, you've got that second.
You mean like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we don't have a tool for that. But if I come over here, let me make one up here for a moment. And if I do this here, and I say this is on a colored background, I actually have to do that with HTML. So if I have this thing that says at the top, this is on a colored background, what I would do is I would put another div around it or a span or something. Div. And let me close the div. I tend to open and close things before I do anything with them. And then I would say style equals background color, colon, say red. So what I'm doing is I'm applying an inline style directly to this. And then if I click on design, that should be red. And if
Yeah,
I,
you forgot one of you forgot your slash before you
oh, did I?
on your second div tag. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I missed one. This one here. And the reason it's not filling this whole box here is because I didn't apply it to the box. I just applied it to the content. So this is going to be whatever I type in. It's going to be red because I've got this div. So that's the way I did it with with these three different colors here. It's it's one line of code, and the color could either be the color name, as I chose red, and you can go online and search for HTML color names, because each one of these names actually has each color and has a name. So if I call this light blue, it's light blue. Or you can enter the hex triplet for it, the RGB, or there's any number of ways of specifying them. So that's it. Sometimes it helps to learn a little bit of HTML.
Definitely. Now we have a question about creating a link using an image. I don't know if you demonstrated that. I was typing
No,
away at the time,
we
so I
can.
didn't see it.
We can. I'm going to close this for a moment. Let's just add a custom page. 00000. I want that to be up at the top, and we do this here. And if I go in and edit that, and if I just create a link here, this is a link with a thumbnail. All right. And so if I create a link here and I say I want it to be to a custom page, I don't care what the custom page is, and I say I want this to be an image, it says, well, select the image. So I don't know if I have something with the word icon in it. Let's try that icon. And if I save that, now we have this link here. So if I publish this page and I go to view the page, now if I click on this, it will just take me to that document. So that's the way you would do that.
Easy enough. And then can you briefly describe what the quick links are?
Are we talking about quick links like in?
Yeah, when you're creating a link and you see the option called quick links.
Oh, yeah.
In the drop down.
Yeah. So when you go to
yeah, it's further down.
the website
tab, there it is.
There's a thing called domain names, quick links, and redirects. The quick links are ways of adding links that you can use in menus and in various links. So the thing is, if I needed a link to a particular website, and I wanted to put it on a menu, I could create a quick link, and you type in the URL of the quick link. You type in the URL of the quick link. What kind of a link is it, or whatever, and you can put it into the menu. The advantage of this is that I've got something. It's not in this demo where I use quick links for event calendars and such. But take a look at the menu tutorial, because I go into that because one of the things I like to do is, instead of going to just the calendar, I like to be able to have filtered views of calendars. There's a tutorial on how to do that in the menu tutorial. So if you just want to show board meetings or committee meetings or performances or whatever, you can say, I want to show this kind of event, or I want to show everything except this kind of event, or except these kinds of events. So it's very, very powerful. And
we have some clubs that have dozens and dozens of activities throughout the month, and so being able to filter on that really saves them a lot of searching and a lot of frustration for their members. That's a really handy feature.
Yeah, and I wind up doing this. If I just show you really quickly, if I think I've got it set up on here. If I go to menus, I have a thing called the club event menu. So if, I'm just going to put it on the member menu for a moment. And I'm going to view submenus, and this is called Club Events. If I put this on here, now if I click on Club Events, I can click on the full calendar, or I can click on just Club Meeting or just Tech Events. So if I click on Club Meetings, you'll see it's only showing newsletter, the meetings, the member orientation newsletter committee. If I click on just Tech Events, it'll just show the event clinic. Again, look at the menu tutorial for how to do that. And of course, I can always click on calendar, which is just a link to the full calendar meeting, full calendar view. What do we got?
Okay. Yeah, we just got a couple more questions here. One of them was a question about like a 3-column was not resizing properly on mobile. The
three-column
text didn't stay inside. And I think the problem in some of those cases is it's either not fully inside the 3-column box, or maybe it was copied and pasted from Word, for example. And so it has extra formatting in there that is interfering with us being able to resize it properly.
Yeah, that is likely. If you insert a 3-column page row from the editor, that should resize properly on a mobile device.
Yep. So it's probably a formatting issue. And when you have issues with that, you can certainly call the support desk and we'll help you figure those out.
Right. And if there's a real problem that needs to be fixed, we'll fix it.
Definitely. We also had a question about how to close up space between the content rows.
You can just,
especially if you can't see
default,
it when it's not obvious.
Yeah, you can just put your cursor someplace and just click on it. You can delete it. And if you delete too many things, if I scroll up here and I press backspace, or I can't see where my cursor is, I mean, these are just behind the scenes. These are divs, and you could actually go in here and go into the HTML and put in some breaks or things like that, because normally the divs put breaks between them.
Okay, and then last question is, can you do a demonstration of the accordion widget, what they would use it for?
Yeah. That's something I didn't show. So let's show the accordion widget for a moment. Let me just go here. Yes, I missed the accordion widget. Let's go to custom pages, and let's view that one here. So the accordion widget is over here. An accordion widget is kind of a handy widget. You can have a number of rows, and within each row, there are little drop downs. So if I click on this here, you'll see the first item's content. If I click on this one, you see the second item's content. Or click on the third one, you can see the third item's content. You can open and close these rows as necessary. And the way they're managed is if I come over here to this accordion widget, you see that I've got this accordion widget, and this is the first item's text. And what happens is you get the name here. And so I can right click on it and I can edit the accordion to say, okay, well, I'm editing the accordion's first panel. And you set its width. You can add more panels. You can say, what's the font? What kind of arrows do you want? Whether or not they have borders. You can change the background colors and all that kind of stuff. So if I change the custom color here, I want this background to be red. And if I save this, when I preview it, I think they show up here. It's not showing up. It's not showing up as that color at the moment here. It would show up in the editor, but I don't want to save that at the moment. If I go back into design mode, so you can go in and change the text and change this. And when you click on any one of these things here, and I edit the panel, so this is the third panel. So as you add them, they just stack here, and you can decide whether or not you want to insert some space beneath the panel. Now, one thing that's important to note, that with any of these things here, if you just go up here to the help and you click on it, it'll give you help on how to use this stuff. And that's, remember, you can ask the system for help very easily. So you got title backgrounds, title colors, borders, things like that. Maybe you don't want arrows, maybe you want circles, things like that. You got a lot of configuration options. and they just show up here. And I don't recall if on the editor, if I just insert one here, if I insert an accordion, panel 1, and if I add another panel, this is the second, and I could add another panel and the third, and if I save that, you'll see how it's put in panel 1. This is the second panel, this is the third, and there's some placeholder text for each one of them. So that's the way you would insert an accordion widget.
And then we just had one last question that popped up is about being able to insert accent marks and like over the letter E when you have different languages, French, Spanish, that
like
kind of thing.
Umlauts and things like that. Yes.
Yeah.
What I typically do is I go someplace and because that is a particular character. It's not a matter of inserting an accent mark on top of a character. If you wanted to do a U with an umlaut, an U umlaut, you would have to, the easiest thing to do is to hold down the Alt key and type the key code for that one. Or let's assume that I want to, if I want to go to Stubing, Austria, I would come over here. I would grab the word Stubing, copy it to the clipboard, and I'd probably just grab something that already has the umlaut in it. And if need be, I could strip the formatting of it. So rather than me going out and typing it in, I have no hesitation to go find something that looks like what I'm trying to do, and then just take away everything that doesn't look like I'm trying to do.
Excellent. That was the last question.
Well, listen, I appreciate the people hanging out for a little extra time. Let me stop sharing here for a minute. So any last questions before we wrap it up? No, someone says, thank you, I need to practice now. That is a wonderful comment. So go forth and practice. I very much appreciate everybody coming by today, and we look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.